Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all to this Asia-Pacific regional commemoration of International Women's Day 2021, Women in Leadership Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. We are very honored to have with us representatives from ESCAP member states, civil society organizations, as well as partners and colleagues from the United Nations system. Will you please join me in welcoming Her Excellency Smriti Irani, Minister for Women and Child Development for the Government of India. Her Excellency Batmung Batsetsek, Minister for Foreign Affairs for the Government of Mongolia. Her Excellency Dr. Sarah Taylor, Ambassador of Canada to the Kingdom of Thailand, and His Excellency Jon Ostrom Gröndal, Ambassador of Sweden in Thailand. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, women's participation and representation in decision-making is a fundamental prerequisite for achieving gender equality. ESCAP member states across the Asia-Pacific region have identified advancing women's leadership as a critical enabler, both for women's empowerment and for development. We have gathered today to facilitate the exchange of knowledge and practices and lessons learned with respect to women's leadership in times of crisis. Before going into the session, could I request you to please turn off your cameras, mute your microphones when not speaking. Thank you. There will be a questions and answer segment towards the end of our event today, where you may ask questions using the Zoom Q&A function. And we will also be monitoring your commentary over Facebook Live. We apologize in advance for any inconvenience caused by the spotlights used in obtaining high-quality video images for this event. The meeting will commence now with the message of the United Nations Secretary-General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, on the occasion of International Women's Day 2021.
The COVID-19 pandemic has erased decades of progress towards gender equality. From high job losses to exploding burdens of unpaid care, from disrupted schooling to an escalating crisis of domestic violence and exploitation, women's lives have been upended and their rights eroded. Mothers, especially single mothers, have faced acute anxiety and adversity. The consequences will far outlast the pandemic. But women have also been on the front lines of pandemic response. They are the essential workers, keeping people alive and holding economies, communities, and families together. They are among the leaders who have kept prevalence rates lower and countries on track for recovery. This year's International Women's Day highlights the transformative power of women's equal participation. We are seeing it ourselves at the United Nations, where I am proud that we have achieved gender parity in UN leadership posts for the first time in history. The evidence is clear. When women lead in government, we see bigger investments in social protection and greater inroads against poverty. When women are in parliament, countries adopt more stringent climate change policies. When women are at the peace table, agreements are more enduring. And with women now serving in equal numbers at the top leadership posts at the United Nations, we are seeing even more concerted action to secure peace, sustainable development, and human rights. In a male-dominated world, with a male-dominated culture, gender equality is essentially a question of power, and males are an essential part of the solution. I call on countries, companies, and institutions to adopt special measures and quotas to advance women's equal participation and achieve rapid change. As we recover from the pandemic, support and stimulus packages must target women and girls specifically, including through investments in women-owned businesses and the care economy. Pandemic recovery is our chance to leave behind generations of exclusion and inequalities. Whether running a country, a business, or a popular movement, women are making contributions that are delivering for all and driving progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. It's time to build an equal future. This is a job for everyone and for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to invite Ms. Amida Salcia Lishabana, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of the United Nations Regional Commission for Asia and the Pacific, to deliver her opening remarks. Ibu Amida, please, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Happy International Women's Day. Our theme today is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World, and comes a year after countries pledge in the Asia-Pacific Beijing +25 Declaration to achieve full, equal, substantive, and effective participation and access to leadership and senior level positions at all levels and in all spheres. And over the past year, as the COVID-19 pandemic wreaked havoc to economies and societies across the region, we witnessed how women in leadership positions have been able to take swift and decisive actions to combat and contain the virus in their countries. Indeed, it is recognized now more than ever that women bring different skills and perspectives that allow them to make essential contributions to the laws, policies, and decisions that work best for all. Without the active participation of women and taking into account women's perspective, the goals of equality, development, and peace for all simply cannot be achieved. And it is not only women with political power who have made a difference in dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. Across our region, women entrepreneurs have been keeping the wheels of their businesses running, offering to their employees a steady income that protects against economic shocks. At ESCAP, we are supporting relief and recovery funds for women entrepreneurs. There are many innovative practices that have emerged across our region as part of our Catalyzing Women's Entrepreneurship project, including the harnessing of digital technologies to access financing solutions for business startups and growth. You will hear more about this shortly from our partner in Cambodia, the She Investments. And in Vietnam, a recent study we conducted shows that women-led businesses are more resilient in times of crisis due to the contingency plans and business continuity strategies that women have put in place as a business growth model. Across the world and Asia-Pacific, women have been on the front lines of response to the COVID-19 pandemic, whether as healthcare workers and community volunteers, or as caretakers for homeschooling children, the sick, and the elderly at home. Women have also formed communities and established informal support structures in many countries in response to the increase in domestic violence. The strength and resilience exhibited by women across the board must be progressively translated into leadership capital for decisive actions that benefit us all and foster solidarity among our communities and societies. It is exactly this capital of solidarity that we need more of now, as we build back better and stronger economies in the wake of the pandemic. Excellencies, having said that, however, entrenched inequalities continue to persist. Women and girls face unequal access to education and discriminatory labor practices. Progress in women's representation in national parliaments, local government bodies, and management positions, while improving, remains uneven across the region. And indicators show that achieving gender equality in decision-making is still a significant challenge. Millions of women and girls simply do not have the opportunities and the capacity to take charge of their own destinies, let alone assume leadership and decision-making positions that can help us build a better and more resilient world. Excellencies, We must therefore renew our commitment and strengthen our engagement to achieve gender equality and women's equal participation and representation in leadership. We must enhance partnership and collaboration at all levels to better inform, develop, implement, and monitor gender-responsive policies and programs with adequate financial resource allocation. We have made it a priority to mainstream gender considerations across the main pillars of our work, from the strong convening power we exert as a regional intergovernmental platform to the in-depth research and analysis we conduct, analysis that forms the backbone of our principled policy advice to governments in the Asia-Pacific region through technical assistance programs that focus on women's leadership and economic empowerment. We, the United Nations system, are leading a large regional initiative to foster women's entrepreneurship as a key strategy to empower women entrepreneurs and women leaders in the economic sectors. We focus on creating an enabling policy environment, increasing access to financial services and digital solutions for women entrepreneurs in Asia and the Pacific. As we weather the COVID-19 pandemic, we, the UN system, together with all our partners, stand ready to build back better, stronger, and more gender-equal economies and societies where no woman and no girl will be left behind. On this International Women's Day, let us reinvigorate our efforts for a better and more equal world, realizing equal rights for women and men, girls and boys everywhere. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Hamida, for your statement. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am now pleased to invite Ms. Anita Bhatia, Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations and Deputy Executive Director of UN Women, to deliver her opening remarks. She will be joining us online. Ms. Bhatia, please, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all attendees. Ms. Armida Alice Jabana, Executive Secretary for ESCAP and UN Under-Secretary General, Honorable Minister for Women and Child Development for the Government of India, Ms. Smriti Irani, Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs for the Government of Mongolia, Ms. Batmuk Batsetseg, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure for me to join you on the occasion of International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to all of us. It is really a wonderful occasion that we can be, unfortunately, not together, but at least in this hybrid format, to consider the significance and the meaning of International Women's Day in the post-COVID era. It is really an extraordinary year that we have lived through. The world had never seen a year like 2020, and we hope that we will not see another year like 2020 for at least another century. This year has forced us to look very hard at the issue of gender equality, because this past year revealed more starkly than ever before that while huge progress has been made in some areas since the transformational agenda of the Beijing Platform for Action and Declaration a quarter of a century ago, there is still, ladies and gentlemen, a long way to go. And that was even before the pandemic broke. Today, during this interactive dialogue, we will have a chance to hear from different stakeholders about some of the issues that we are facing in achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world. And as we go into this dialogue, it is worth just reminding ourselves of what the evidence is to date of progress or not. And here's what the evidence is. Today, less than 30% of all parliamentary seats are held by women. Today, less than 10% of all heads of state are women. Today, less than 10% of all heads of government are women. Today, less than 15 countries in the world have gender equal cabinets. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in 2021, not in 1721. It is time for gender equality to become real in our lifetimes. Asia Pacific is one of the most dynamic regions in the world, if not the most dynamic. Asia is young. Asia is forward-looking. Asia is the future of the world. If in this region we cannot have women and gender equality achieved in our lifetimes, where will we be able to do it? Ladies and gentlemen, we must, on the occasion of International Women's Day, agree to make personal, professional, and political commitments to make gender equality a reality. We have seen through the pandemic that women have carried the world on their shoulders through these difficult times. Exactly as my colleague said, they have been frontline workers, they have led communities, they have provided medical care, they have provided mental care, they have provided succor, courage, and they have been role models for everyone. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, that we ensure that all policies going forward truly put women at the center of the responses so that we are building back equal in order to build back better. Specifically, this means recognizing that the care burden for women has gone up. It was 3 times the care burden that men had before the pandemic. I assure you it has increased exponentially. Specifically, this means making sure that violence against women is eliminated once and for all. Specifically, this means we pay attention to the issue of the impact of the care burden on labor force participation. Specifically, this means we must make sure that stimulus packages target and actually reach women, either as individuals or as businesses. Specifically, ladies and gentlemen, this means we must support civil society and women's movements who understand what is going on and help us to craft policies that are truly responsive. And specifically, ladies and gentlemen, to honor the theme of this year's International Women's Day, it means we must have women in decision-making roles. I am so thrilled that we are joined by Ministers Irani and Batsetsek today because both of you epitomize what women's leadership is. It is a real pleasure and an honor for me to be able to share this stage with you and to hear from you as examples, as exemplary leaders, exactly what can be done to create other such role models. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not be able to build back better if we only think about women's leadership. We need to keep women in mind, in the room, and at the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bhatia, for your statement. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I now have the pleasure to announce the launch of a joint regional report entitled The Long Road to Equality, Taking Stock of the Situation of Women and Girls in Asia and the Pacific for Beijing Plus 25. This report was jointly developed by ESCAP and UN Women with support from UN agencies in the region. To celebrate its launch, a short video has been prepared, which I'm hereby requesting our colleagues to screen for you. Please do sit back and enjoy.
On this day, ESCAP and UN Women proudly present The Long Road to Equality, a synthesis report on the situation of women and girls in Asia and the Pacific for Beijing plus 25. This report draws on 3 sources of data: National Review reports on progress in implementing the Beijing Platform for Action between 2014 and 2019, available SDG data, and secondary literature. The Beijing Platform for Action acts as a guiding framework for policy actions and measures that align with approaches to gender equality and women's empowerment. This report highlights areas of regional progress, as well as challenges, and spotlights promising practices at the country and regional levels. Member states have prioritized legislative actions that introduce or strengthen frameworks to advance gender equality and women's empowerment. However, the report found that more attention needs to be focused on the implementation of legislative measures across all areas. Need to strengthen national gender machineries and the building of partnerships to bolster effective implementation. Unlocking progress requires recognition of women's multiple roles and contributions. Gender data must be strengthened in all domains. Progress in women's political participation and representation has been slow and uneven. While women's representation rates in national parliaments increased from 12.7% in 2000 to 19.9% in 2020, it remains below the global average of 24.9%. Significant regional progress has been made in closing gender gaps in secondary education, yet women's labour force participation rates remain low. Greater regional efforts are needed to enable the school-to-work transition and ensure that decent work opportunities are available to young women. Violence against women and girls prevalence rates remain high across the region. Addressing discriminatory social norms can have a preventative and protective effect on and offline, particularly when men and boys are engaged. On average, women in Asia and the Pacific spend 4.1 times the amount of time men spend on unpaid care and domestic work. Policies that recognize, reduce, and redistribute unpaid care and domestic work are critical for ensuring women's access to decent work and shared prosperity. It is essential to provide policies to enable women and men to balance paid work and family responsibilities. Women's vulnerability to climate change in the region is shaped by gender inequalities and access to resources, dependence on agricultural livelihoods, and unpaid care and domestic work. Member States' efforts to address the immediate impacts of climate change and environmental degradation must be complemented with efforts to reduce gender-based vulnerabilities over the long term. Key recommendations: need to ramp up efforts to address discriminatory social norms, need to emphasize more on implementation, policies and laws, particularly in addressing violence against women and girls, need to address the gap between the gains and educational attainment and women's access to decent work opportunities, need to put in place policies that recognize, reduce, and redistribute women's unpaid care and domestic work. Social protection measures should be crafted in a gender-responsive manner. We need to develop gender-responsive environmental policies with the engagement of women, need to invest in the regular collection of regionally comparable gender data, including time use data. Many positive steps have been taken by leaders in our region, including committing to the 2019 Asia-Pacific Declaration on Gender Equality. As we weather the COVID-19 pandemic, the UN family and our committed partners stand ready to support governments in our region to build back better, stronger, and more gender-equal economies and societies where no woman and no girl will be left behind.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Now may I please invite our Executive Secretary Ibu Amida and Mr. Mohammed Nasiri, Regional Director for UN Women's Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific, to jointly launch the regional report. Most kindly step to the main stage for a photo opportunity to celebrate the launch of this most important report. Thank you very much. Ibu Hamida, Mr. Nasiri, thank you very much for your presence with us today and for launching the regional report. I would like to inform our audience that the report is available online on both the UN SCAP and UN Women Asia Pacific websites. Dear participants, I am now pleased to invite Her Excellency Smriti Irani, India's Minister for Women and Child Development, to deliver her special address. Honorable Ms. Smriti Irani, please, will be joining us online. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, and a very warm welcome to all the distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and especially excellencies who join us today in celebrating the International Women's Day. I bring you greetings from the national capital of India, greetings on behalf not only of women, but also the men who are dedicated to the cause of uplifting their equal partners. Today, as we speak about achieving an equal future in a COVID-19 world, I pay my respects to over 6 million Indian women who were at the forefront of tackling the COVID-19 pandemic. Over 500,000 female doctors, over 3 million female nurses, over 1.4 million Anganwadi workers, 1 million plus ASHA workers, who not only tended to the sick and needy in hospitals, but also ensured doorstep delivery of food grains for every woman in need in our country. A nation that was resilient to fight the pandemic saw, under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, an 8-month free ration delivered to over 800 million Indians. Additionally, a campaign began by the Prime Minister as early as 2014 to ensure women have access to banking facilities, ensured that over 220 million Indian women, for the first time in their lives, had access to a bank account. And it is this bank account that became an accessible tool for women to enhance and to sustain their purchasing power. We saw a transfer of cash of over 309 billion rupees to the bank accounts of these 220 million women during the pandemic so that they can sustain their livelihoods. We in India are proud of over 6 million women who have come together in self-help groups to support their economic activities so that they can be empowered themselves and help those around them to build a better, a brighter future. Today, I am happy to share with you that while Ms. Bhatia spoke about the need to politically empower women, Indian Parliament sees the largest number of female representatives ever in the history of our democracy. And while we celebrate the potential of women in Parliament and our legislative assemblies, we in India are more so proud of 1.3 million women who serve in political offices across all villages in India as sarpanchs and panchayat members. And it is my appeal today to this August gathering that when we celebrate the potential prowess of women in terms of politics, why not also look at women who are serving at the grassroots? Because that's where begins the political foundations of the fairer gender. Today in India, we celebrate the potential of Indian female entrepreneurs and female-led businesses. In a country where access to credit under a scheme called Mudra Yojana ensured that over 270 million bank loans were given, we are happy to celebrate that 70% of those beneficiaries happen to be women. This is indicative of their potential not only to strengthen themselves financially, but also the entrepreneurial abilities which were thus far not encouraged. I must here add that in a startup ecosystem, over 41,000 new startups saw a participation of by 44% female entrepreneurs, which have raised over $60 billion. This is yet again indicative that Indian women are dedicated to building a resilient economy. And today, while we celebrate International Women's Day, our commitment for the future is this: a future which is built on a foundation of equal opportunity, provides equal opportunity in education. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to tell you that the national education policy that has been revised after 3 decades for the first time in the history of our country finds a gender inclusion fund. A fund which is dedicated not only to strengthening potential for girls in education in the school system, but also is decisively working towards ensuring that women's participation in higher education increases. A future that is built on financial empowerment and devolution of fiscal abilities by the government of India. For the first time in the history of our country, we have seen under the 15th Finance Commission, devolution of funds to state governments with a gender lens, where now responsible fiscal spending needs to ensure that women are at the forefront of the government discourse and administrative implementing abilities. Today, as we join each other virtually, I must say this, that India has over 400,000 common service centers which are manned by women, and I must correct myself to say women by our entrepreneurial and diligent female workforce. These common service centers, in fact, ensure that over 200 government policies and schemes are made digitally available to every village block in our country. It is on this shoulder of an enabled Indian woman lies the building blocks, or for that matter, lies the foundation of a better and a stronger world. With that, I wish everybody who has joined us a very happy International Women's Day. I know that I'm today joined by men and women who have dedicated their lives to enable a better future for our girls, so that, as has been rightly said, no girl is left behind, no woman's dreams are shattered. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency Ms. Smriti Irani, for your statement. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Ms. Batmung Batsetsek, Mongolia's Minister for Foreign Affairs, to deliver her special address. The Honorable Minister has pre-recorded a message that now will be shown on the screen.
Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be a part of this interactive dialogue jointly organized by UNICEF and the UN Women, where Mongolia is serving as a member of the Executive Board. It has been 1 year since the world has started to strive through all those challenges of the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. With the vaccination campaigns underway throughout the world, I do hope that we would be able to restore our economies and return to normal lives. My country has started vaccination rollouts this February, and our first priority lies with the frontline healthcare workers at high risk. Women make up 82% of all health workers in Mongolia. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout our history, women in Mongolia have held our highest social status and a legacy as leaders compared to the rest of the world. Enabling legal environment, changing the societal stereotyping, access to equal opportunities, and increasing the participation of women at decision-making level are crucial to achieving gender equality and women empowerment. Gender equality has been one of the primary thrusts of the government of Mongolia, and my country is a signatory to all major international instruments pertaining to women's rights and gender equality. Strong legal environment and international commitments to gender equality have provided a solid foundation for mainstreaming gender into the development policies and programs. Over the past years, gender has been mainstreamed in all sectoral policies, and local gender councils were established. Today, 13 out of 76 members of the parliament are women. The newly established cabinet has 4 women ministers, which is the highest number since the first democratic elections. Our women parliament members have always joined efforts regardless of their political affiliation and persuasion, as this unity was crucial to increasing the awareness of gender issues and ensured substantive representation of women interest in legislative processes, increased funding to gender and child programs. The current Women Parliamentary Caucus prioritizes poverty, employment, domestic violence, women and child rights, and youth development. But despite the fact that Mongolia is ahead of most regional countries on gender issues, challenges not only continue to persist, but also have been exacerbated by the pandemic. National Committee on Gender has recently conducted a study on COVID-19 impact on women and girls together with UNDP. The study reveals that domestic violence and an unequal share of unpaid care and domestic work our women and girls bear has significantly increased due to pandemic response measures such as lockdown. The shift to online learning is disproportionately affecting the students in rural or remote areas, and furthermore there is a possible argument that girls' education is more adversely affected by COVID-19 as they have more responsibilities and time to take care of household chores. In the future, it may lead to more shrinking the female participation in labor market, which has decreased over the past 10 years. To address the challenges posed by COVID-19, Mongolia has implemented an economic stimulus package that included social and unemployment insurance contributions, relief for both employers and employees, as well as child money program benefiting approximately 1.19 million children. Moreover, Mongolia recently has adopted $3.5 billion comprehensive national plan to support gender-responsive socio-economic recovery and fiscal stimulus measures. The plan aims at creating jobs as the best welfare is a guaranteed job with high pay. We believe that the economic empowerment is a key and accelerating factors to promote gender equality and achieving sustainable development. Distinguished participants, Mongolia appreciates the UN Women and UNICEF for serving as an all-inclusive intergovernmental platform to accelerate the implementation of global gender equality commitments. In my country, like globally, most SMEs, which are largely dominated by women, are facing reduced demand and supply and disruption in value chains and experiencing the declines in revenues. Therefore, it is crucial to create gender statistics, to define policies to support women-owned enterprises during emergencies and beyond. In this connection, I wish to applaud initiatives such as the Women Enterprise Recovery Fund, operated by UNICEF, to support innovative business solutions to address constraints faced by women-led enterprises. I hope that this initiative would be expanded to all sub-regions. In conclusion, let me wish a happy International Women's Day to all participants. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency Batsetsek, for these remarks. It's now my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Dr. Sarah Taylor, Ambassador of Canada to the Kingdom of Thailand, to present the initiative Ambassadors for a Day competition. Dr. Taylor, please, the floor is yours.
There we are. Honorable Ministers, distinguished UN colleagues, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and friends across the Asia-Pacific region, good morning, bonjour, sawadee-ka, and happy International Women's Day to you all. I'm very pleased to be here today to represent our Women Ambassadors group here in Bangkok, as well as the many women heads of UN agencies here in Bangkok, to share with you about our Ambassador for a Day program. So thank you to UNSCAP for giving me this opportunity. And I should say right up front, I'm joined by the Canadian winners, or the winners who are associated with me, if you like, of the Ambassador for a Day competition, Ms. Waneta Tsutswong from Chiang Mai, and Ms. Tanyalak Liangsombat from Khon Kaen. So they are amongst almost 100 young men and women between the ages of 16 and 25 from across Thailand who participated in the Ambassador for a Day competition and submitted videos explaining how they would address issues that confront women in Thai society today. These entries touched on everything from domestic violence to social media to gender stereotypes. And 27 of the best entrants were selected to shadow 16 women, so ambassadors and heads of UN agencies here in Bangkok for the day. And many of our winners of the Ambassador of a Day competition are here with us in the room today. So I just ask you to take a moment to join me in congratulating them on being Ambassador for a Day. So my colleagues and I launched this competition as a way to inspire, encourage, and empower Thailand's youth with a taste of leadership in an international context. For Canada and for my colleagues' institutions and countries, this is a natural fit with our international priorities and ambitions. Not only is empowering women and girls the right thing to do from a human rights perspective, but it's also a tremendous opportunity to improve our societies and our economies. We know that we all stand to benefit when there are no barriers to the equal treatment and the equal participation of half of the inhabitants of our planet. So let us emphasize not only the right, but also the opportunity that stands before us. And I think, as several speakers have mentioned, this is particularly true as we navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and plan our recovery from it. I was very struck by one of the earlier speakers who spoke about building back equal. We all know about building back better, but building back equal is just as important. We simply cannot afford to leave half of our population behind. We need women leaders, and also we need male leaders who are used to working in a context where there are women leaders as well. So that means giving women and girls opportunities to succeed. It means removing barriers to participation. It means tackling restrictive and harmful cultural practices. And it means ensuring a safe environment free from all forms of violence against women. So those are some of the issues that not only do we want to achieve, but we want our young ambassadors for a day to help us in achieving. So in the spirit of Ambassador for a Day, I want to stop my remarks there and actually hand over the stage to Ms. Waneta and Ms. Tanyalak. So first of all, I'd like to show you as an example of the videos that we received, Ms. Waneta's excellent video which addresses how social media affects women and girls around the world. And then after that, we'll turn the floor over to Ms. Tanyalak to say a few words about her views on women's leadership. So I hope that their experience and enthusiasm can inspire young women and men across the Asia-Pacific region. So let's hear from our ambassadors for a day. Khop khun ka, thank you very much.
An issue that's been slowly creeping up on society these days is the effects of social media. Hi, my name is Nedi and I'm from Thailand. I'm here to tell you a story. This story starts just as any other day might. Helen just got out of bed. She walks over to her bathroom yawning. Another day, she sighs to herself. As she walks by the mirror, she stopped and stared at the face looking back. It didn't smile, it didn't move. It even looked sad and a little confused. Like many others, Helen knew deep down that the face looking back had many things wrong. Where was that cheekbone? What's with that nose? Tired, but all these questions suddenly arose. You see, night after night, Helen saw Brittany and Maddie and Sam and Alex and the perfect world they had with the perfect looks they were given. Helen turned back towards her bed, light plopped down on her head. A moment later, she picked up her phone and there they were, More Britneys, more Maddies, more Sams, and more Alexes, and more perfect. Yet not a single Helen in sight. Okay, let me stop you right there. What do you think happened next? Countless possibilities. Helen could have just went on with her day like nothing had happened, because after all, nothing had happened, right? Or she could have called a friend. The friend might have made her feel better. Or she could have went downstairs to say hi to her brother. Okay, now I'll tell you what some Helens do. Moments of silence filled up the room, except it wasn't silent. In her head, Helen was crying. She wondered why she was here, the things she can't do, and how the world might do better without this Helen here too. Helen is one of many who suffers from social media-induced depression, and not at all is she alone in feeling that way. Back to the drawing board. What if I told you that this killer is actually just a polka-dotted octopus frog wearing an invisible cloak? There are several ways we can protect the society, our society, things we can do as individuals to alleviate the situation and innovate the world we live in to let women and girls all over the world, Thailand included, know that it is possible and even encouraged to overcome the issues that come with unhealthy use of social media. And it's so easy. If social media is the cause of rising depression, then why don't we fill the media with ways that Helen could learn to appreciate herself, and even better, to appreciate the person she could become. I believe in a world where no one will be shamed for how their body looks, hurt for speaking up about something they believe in, or unfairly ridiculed for showing vulnerability. Let's create this world together and be rid of the polka-dotted octopus frog by spreading stories like Helen's on social media, for us and for future us.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Thanyalak Liam Sombat. It's an honor to be here today. On the occasion of International Women's Day 2021, I would like to speak in terms of Thai social issues and young women's leadership to encourage women youth for achieving an equal future. First of all, in the aspect of youth like us, leader is a position which seems great and important, sometimes also seems difficult to be. However, history has shown that women in leadership are possible, and she could perform well. For instance, Marie Curie, Amelia Earhart, Rosa Parks, Mother Teresa, and my mom, Suripon, who works as a nurse at Rajavati Hospital in Bangkok. On the other hand, although some young women have potential and intention to be a leader, they encounter barriers such as gender-based discrimination, unequal access to education, and lack of opportunities. Furthermore, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic downturn leads to increases in social issues, for example, lack of basic education and subjected to violence and sexual assault. Unfortunately, these problems tend to occur with impoverished women and girls. For that reason, I, as a young woman who now has the opportunity to be here, would like to encourage those friends and sisters that knowledge is the armor to protect our rights, and education is the best weapon to battle for a better tomorrow. That is to say, young women like us can make a change by recognizing women's rights, valuing education, our capabilities, and our leadership. I confidently believe in our great potentials and assure you that we, as young women, will play principal roles in the future internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kun Thanyarat, for your statement. And thank you very much, Ambassador Taylor, as well, for your presentation and for this important initiative. Thank you as well to other excellencies, the Executive Secretary Ibu Amida, and other representatives and heads of UN agencies that have participated to make this initiative a success. And of course, our heartfelt congratulations to all the winners in this competition. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to the interactive dialogue, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. This segment of the program for today will discuss the importance of women's representation and leadership and will be moderated by Mr. Mohamed Nasiri, Regional Director for UN Women's Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Nasiri, please, it's my pleasure to invite you to moderate this session. The floor is yours.
A very good morning. Excellencies, ambassadors for the day, youth, young people, and all the friends of the women's rights and gender equality agenda who are with us here today. We really would have loved to have as many leaders as we can that we know that have demonstrated exceptional leadership in trying times. However, today on International Women's Day, we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize a few. We cannot, unfortunately, because the numbers are many, but we wanted to recognize a few, mainly women leaders from different sectors, and to hear about how your experiences and lessons learned as women's leaders. Before we start, I would like to recognize that it's a hybrid session, so please, for those who are with us here today, can feel free to come up with questions from the floor, but for those who are with us online, please, you can put your questions in the Zoom chat. I would like to start with the first participant and panelist today from the Women's Leadership in Times of Crisis pillar, which is going to be Ms. Renee Graham, joining us online. Ms. Graham is the Secretary for Women and Chief Executive in the Ministry of Women in New Zealand. Allow me to pose this question to you, Ms. Graham. Could you briefly share on the strategy that the government of New Zealand adopted in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic in a way that ensured that gender equality considerations were considered as integral to the response? Please.
Mohammed. Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, excellencies, ministers, undersecretary, colleagues, and friends across the world. Because I work for the Ministry for Women in New Zealand, every day to us is Women's Day, but today we get to share that burden with everyone else across the world. And thank you, ESCAPE and UN Women for hosting this session today, sharing ideas and discussions across economies and across public and private sectors means that women and girls in all countries can benefit. And this is particularly important now that it's been well documented that the pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on women. It is remiss for me to talk about leadership in times of crisis without first acknowledging New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, and the challenges New Zealand has faced over the last couple of years. Prior to the pandemic, you will have been aware that we had a terrorist attack on a mosque that killed 51 Muslim New Zealanders and injured many more. We then had a volcanic eruption that killed 22 people. And then we head into a COVID-19 pandemic. One of the things that helped us to come together in the pandemic and these events were that we were unified behind a single purpose. We are a small country of 5 million people, so we do look for leadership to guide our approach, our actions, and our response. Unifying behind a single purpose enables you to ensure that communication is transparent and clear and easy to follow. For example, in the mosque attack, our key unifying purpose was that it was one of New Zealand's darkest days. And we acted immediately, for instance, changing gun laws. For COVID, it was Unite Against COVID, and our Prime Minister was present and available. We ensured that our messaging was available and accessible to all parts of New Zealand. So, for example, our Pacific communities, our ethnic communities, our women. So we adjusted the communication style so that they got what they were needing and they were understanding. So what does some research say about leading in a crisis? That communicating effectively is a transparency, providing frequent updates is necessary. Demonstrating empathy, dealing with the human tragedy first and as a priority. So in New Zealand, you will have seen our Prime Minister being available at 1 p.m. at all of our press releases, and she was the one that's giving our message in terms of COVID. There's already research out there that show that women leaders generally outperform men in engagement surveys. Women are empathetic, acknowledge fears, and this difference grew larger during crisis. Recently, attention has been given to the role female leaders have played in a pandemic. Not just Jacinda Ardern, but Angela Merkel, Finland's Sanna Marin, Iceland's Katrin Jakobsdottir, Taiwan's Tsai Ing-wen, to name a few. We've already heard from 2 ministers this afternoon. But only 8% of political leaders globally are women. And that's just 19 or 20 out of 193 countries. Yet what the research has shown, what a recent study showed, was that women have accounted for an estimated 40% of the most successful responses to COVID-19. We also know that outcomes related to COVID-19 were systemically better in countries led by women. Women-led countries have 6 times a lower death rate than those led by male counterparts. And this may be explained by observed behaviour, empathy, and other factors. In a nutshell, being led by women has provided countries with an advantage, and that's been the case in New Zealand too. We really don't know why, but I'll leave that to you to think about. What does that mean for us? It means that whether you're a CEO, a manager, a president, or a prime minister, our leadership counts. It makes a big difference. Practice the characteristics of leadership that are engaging and help cement your messages. Be prepared in the future. Always assume the possibility of a crisis. And lastly, always lead in the same way, whether or not there's a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Graham, and thank you for keeping to the time. And thank you for not only mentioning the experiences of New Zealand, but for those other countries that have been led by women, whether at the helm of the state or at the helm of the COVID response. And as you rightly said, the response has been much more comprehensive in these countries that have been headed by women. Before I move to the second speaker, I would also like to recognize that we have participants from online, from the Philippines, from Bangladesh, from the Republic of Korea, from Mongolia, from Pakistan. Now we move to another speaker, also online, and she will be speaking to us on the role of women's rights organizations in supporting government's response in times of crisis. Ms. Sumaya Islam. Ms. Sumaya, you're the Executive Director of Bangladesh Nari Shramik Kendra, and you will also be presenting a PowerPoint and a video. The question to you is, could you briefly share how, as Executive Director of Bangladesh Nari Shramik Kendra, you and other women's rights organizations have supported your government in responding to the COVID crisis? The floor is yours, Ms. Islam.
Thank you so much for your next question. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, happy International Women's Day. Yes, we like to mention what we have done during COVID and after COVID. There is one video that is, I hope our Skype even women, they will show that one, or now I am presenting my PowerPoint presentation. Role of women rights organization in supporting the women response in times of a crisis. The first slide, if you see our first slide is BNSK has done action research during COVID time about their situation. Next slide, please. If you see the COVID-19 pandemic socio-economic situation of women migrant workers, this is for informal sector. Just after that one, we have done another action research, COVID-19 pandemic and women migrant workers, service delivery mechanism and way forward. These two research find out the situation and what types of support need to provide from government, civil society and other women's organization as well as women. Next slide, please. The slide, just I am showing a few slides. This research report will be in our website. We asked just when start the COVID, we have seen the situation of women migrant workers in country and overseas, all they are facing problem because they are not getting their salary. We asked the question, do you receive salary during COVID time? They said only 22% said yes, 4% no, and 74% partial. This is for all in-country and overseas migrant workers. And already our UN Secretary General mentioned the workload, and other distinguished speaker also mentioned about the workload. And it shows our research that workload increase 63%. They are saying it is double and triple because during COVID time, all family members, they are staying in home. So they have to care by elderly, women, all sick people and other also. Next slide, please. And the support service for the during COVID time, the BNSK survey report shows that did you receive masks, PPE and medical support? And our women migrant worker, country of destination and country of origin, both are saying, next slide please. They are saying only 11% yes and 89% no. Here we can see that most of the service and everything are consuming by man. Women are less prioritized when they are poor, when they are women, when they are informal sector. Then what we have done from BNSK with other family members, UN organization, other development agency, with all support, we have done huge work in the ground level. This time during COVID, we have seen what is the role of women leadership. In the slum area, we have 21 women migrant workers who have served the slum area people, poor people, and we have served hot meal to the workers, the elderly people, to the children. Next slide, please. And at the same time, we talked to our Jordan embassy, Lebanon embassy, Bahrain embassy. This is our honorable ambassador, Naida Suban. We talked with them at the Jordan undocumented workers, how we can support them and how we can support in the airport service delivery. So this is a slide show the link bridge with country of destination embassies. And another slide is, next slide, you could see the psychological support. That time, our workers very much tension about the family members, about their income, they need to come back. Then there are huge phone call we received during COVID. And next slide, please. Women migrant workers counseling was our 24 hours counseling hotline was on to give them encourage, give them leadership. So you don't afraid of it. This is the time being, so the time will over, just work on, and embassy people through link bridge with them and the civil society organization over there. Next slide, please. And realities of women migrant workers during COVID pandemic, what we have seen, pay is insufficient for the livelihood in grassroots level and the destination where the women workers is working. Women mobility is legally and institutionally constrained in destination, especially GCC states. Embassies' roles are limited because bounded by legal and institutional framework for country of destination. During COVID, it became more typical. Gulf country, our embassy people, even other civil society organization cannot get entrance when they face trouble in destination country. Next slide, please. Resource mobilization to support women workers was very difficult, and we really happy to announce that one. The UN Women first came for women, and when the COVID pandemic started, every door closed, people can't brave to come out. Only our slum returning migrant worker and women worker came out, and BNSK was there. And for this mobilization, family members, friends, and advocacy for fund allocation we have done. Country of destination and country of origin, Minister of Expected Welfare have done huge work. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Prime Minister Office, already our government 70 billion money already allocate for the women workers. Networking, increasing support of migrant from Asia, National Human Rights Commission, GATW, ILO. Strengthening support service mechanism, grassroots to global. Prakash and British Council was with us. Collaboration with country of destination and country of origin. We support still Lebanese undocumented worker getting support. Our partner organization in Lebanon. Next slide, please. And for COVID, this is shows us different way. There is no single person. Everybody should work together. Capacity building as human, women and migrant. Capacity building for economic autonomy. Capacity building for equality in all shapers of life. Capacity building for women roles in policy decision. Already our Indian minister mentioned that one. And decision-making ability, home to national, international and regional. Views and voice, grassroots level to global. Political representation is very important. And last of all, asset ownership. Women and earning, women and working, women work, women money cannot count. And there is no real database, and there is no database for their contribution. So this International Women's Day 2021, and we face pandemic in 2019. So we will request proper database, proper power, disaggregate, proper database, and proper leadership economy should focus on that one. And we believe that women are not alone, and we should work for respect, recognize, remunerate for all women and girls work, and build back better with equal society. We should work whole of society and whole of government approach. No woman, no girl will be left behind. Work for all. Happy Women's Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Lam. And again, focusing and shedding the light on women's migrants, and especially women migrant workers here in the region and globally, has been amongst the most affected by the COVID pandemic. And as you have shown in your presentation, it's not one entity's responsibility, but it's a whole of a society and a whole of a community approach. And your work not only with the government, but with also the host governments across in the different countries have been very effective. We move to women leaders in the private sector, who, again, you've been working very tirelessly to advance gender equality and women's empowerment in that field. And I move to Ms. Celia Boyd. Celia, you're the co-founder and the managing director of She Investments. As the director of She Investments, how have you found opportunities to advance women's economic empowerment? Celia is joining us also online. To you.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me, everybody. So good morning and thank you for having me here today. It's an honor to speak alongside such inspiring people who I have a great amount of respect for. To introduce myself briefly, I'm one of the co-founders and the current managing director of She Investments, which is a registered business in Cambodia and is the first business incubator and accelerator which is specifically designed for Cambodian women. So this means that all of our products and services, whether training programs or digital tools, are designed using a gender and cultural lens and are delivered in Khmer language by Khmer female facilitators. So at SHE, we believe that investing in women is an opportunity and not an act of charity. We believe that women are a driving force in our economy and that they have the right to access business support services that are designed for and relevant for them and their specific contexts and environments. Women are a diverse group and they need tailored solutions which respect their diverse needs. Women are capable and powerful individuals who, if given the right tools and support structures, they can grow and thrive, which in turn benefits us all. So SHE has been running for 6 years now, and in that time, more than 320 Cambodian women have graduated from SHE incubator and accelerator programs since 2015, all of them being micro to small size businesses. So typically, women's micro and informal businesses are not exactly an attractive investment opportunity. However, together, these 320 women have created over 500 new jobs, and they report an increase of over $720,000 US in revenue on a monthly basis. So that's millions of dollars in new revenue every year being contributed towards Cambodia's economic growth. And again, these are all micro to small-sized enterprises. Now, we should not need to put a figure on the return that women as private sector leaders can make when we invest in them. They have the right to equal access to business support. However, we should begin to understand that investing in women to enable them to overcome gender-specific barriers is an economic opportunity for us all and not only an act of charity. So the section of this conference which I've been invited to contribute to is about how we as private sector leaders can find opportunities to advance gender equality. So as I've mentioned, SHE focuses entirely on promoting and advancing women in business because we believe that this is the best way that we can contribute towards not only women's empowerment, but also social and economic change for all of us. However, I mentioned earlier that I'm a co-founder and the current managing director of SHE. So our co-founders are Australian and Cambodian. And in light of the current topic, I'd like to very briefly share how I, as a white Australian woman, believe that we can all advance gender equality in 2021. We all have different roles to play when it comes to closing the gender gap in the private sector. Some of us with particular privilege may need to play a particular role. We need to recognise how we can best contribute towards a world where the private sector is a truly equal playing field. And until we reach that goal, we need to be focusing on equity as a pathway towards reaching equality. At SHE, 2021 is an exciting year for us in many ways. And one very special way is that we're now in the process of handing over to Cambodian female leadership. This means that our majority Cambodian female team will be led by a majority Cambodian female leadership team. And very importantly, my role will be handed over to a very amazing Cambodian woman who will be our country manager. A key reason for our leadership transition is because as a white woman in Cambodia, it is my absolute privilege and my role to build up other women around me, to recognise when it is time for me to step aside and to enable other women who are true role models in their country to step forwards. So I'd like to use this platform today to encourage all men, women and gender diverse individuals from varying backgrounds and degrees of privilege to use International Women's Day as an opportunity to really reflect on what our role is in advancing gender equality. The private sector is unfortunately not yet a one-size-fits-all equal playing field. So until we can create an enabling environment that allows all people who identify as women, which is an incredibly diverse group of people, easier transitions to scale businesses and to step into leadership roles, we are limiting economic recovery and growth. So only when we truly value the role that women play in our economy will we understand the true opportunity that really lies ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Celia. And for the longest time, the United Nations have not paid due attention to such an important partner in the Sustainable Development Goals achievement, which is the private sector. And we're finally trying to find ways to engage in a more fruitful way. As you rightly said, Celia, it's not only the right thing to do to have more women in businesses, but it's also the smart thing to do. And you moving from having she being managed by white women leaders to localizing the leadership in Cambodia, where the company is being established, is yet another move towards the right direction. We finally moved from the online to the in-person, and we would like to have Ms. Ramida Joing Paisal, the digital product designer and front-end developer at 5Lab. Ms. Joing Paisal, could you share what inspired you to develop a COVID-19 tracking application as a digital product designer working with 5Lab here in Thailand?
Thank you for having me today. I am Ramida Joing Paisal from Thailand, and I'm the initiator of the COVID tracker. Early March 2020, my mother messaged me about the new COVID case not far from my office in Bangkok. And I searched for more detail, and there was too much information with unreliable source online, same as the other case. So the information, including fake news, keeps spreading on social media without any proof or proper media coverage. So I asked myself, why there is no place that gathers all information that we can check easily. So I took the idea to my colleague at 5Lab, and I'm so lucky that I have a full support from my team, and we create it only in one night. The COVID Tracker by 5Lab is a location-based website providing credible information about the coronavirus situation, about places that may be contaminated and should be avoided, or places that are now sterilized, nearby hospital, and the cost of testing for COVID-19 from each hospital. Unfortunately, not every woman are lucky as me. Women are underrepresented in tech industry, and women in the industry are often has fewer opportunities. The biggest challenge, in my opinion, is the perception that girls are less suited for technology-based roles, but I hope we will change it very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kun Armida. You've shown how you've attended very swiftly to the needs on the ground, and as we have heard and we've seen so many times how misinformation, disinformation, and fake news have affected negatively the well-being of people around the world because of COVID, and your application is one of the tools that would allow us to verify the information and to make sure where to go and how to go about it. Thank you very much. Last but not least, our esteemed resident coordinator in Thailand, Ms. Gita Sabarawal. Ms. Gita, as the UN resident coordinator here in Thailand, could you share on initiatives that the country team, the UN country team, is and will be driving to advance women's leadership nationally across different spheres of development and also within the UN system? Ms. Gita.
Thank you, Mohammed, for the opportunity to participate in today's panel as we commemorate International Women's Day at this unique time in history. I'm inspired by the rich perspectives that have been shared by colleagues from member states, private sector, civil society, and the public. UN Thailand's work has gender equality at the heart of every agency's mandate. I would like to highlight some of our collective efforts to advance women's leadership and a more equitable society. We know that empowering women is a fundamental human right which benefits each and every one of us. Let me start with the work that your agency does, UN Women, training more than 300 women to prevent trafficking in persons, and in partnership with government and civil society to engage comprehensively to address violence against women and girls. Nationally, UN Thailand supports women's leadership and political participation through collective engagement and advocacy at every level. In the economic sector, ILO, in partnership with the private sector, is enabling women to acquire the critical soft and technical STEM-related skills to gain quality employment and support career advancements in the electrical and electronics industry. As we know, women are disproportionately at risk of losing employment to automation, and these efforts to help transition them from low-skilled jobs to quality STEM-related careers is extremely critical. Women's leadership in society starts with strong education foundations and bridging the gender gaps. UNICEF, ITU, and UNESCO are jointly working on ICT training, including artificial intelligence and programming, to prepare girls and young women for the new technology-driven world and to close the digital divide. As we cope, adapt, and transform in the context of the pandemic, we know that socioeconomic disruptions have disproportionately affected women both at work and in the home. Many women's economic security has been threatened as they lose incomes while taking on the lion's share of unpaid household work and caring for their families. Those who were already at risk of abuse are increasingly vulnerable to gender-based violence. A recent ESCAP study on Thailand tells us that 14% of lower-income women believe their partners are justified in beating them. A disturbing rationalization that holds true among 7% of women overall in the country. However, we just need to look around us to see the immense diversity of women in Thailand and the extraordinary leadership today. Most human rights defenders in Thailand are women and key partners with the UN. As the UN stands out globally for its pandemic response, 1 million health volunteers continue to conduct outreach and contact tracing. Almost 90% of these were women. UN Thailand as a whole is working closely with the private sector to lead the way on gender equity. 24% of CEOs and 43% of CFOs in the country are women, well above the regional and the global averages. There is still much more work to be done together. One urgent issue is adolescent pregnancies, affecting learning opportunities and lifelong socioeconomic well-being. The answer emerges over and over again. Women in leadership and decision-making across the board have a powerful impact. We can no longer afford to exclude some of our best people at the table as we take this country and the world to be more prosperous, peaceful, and sustainable, in line with Thailand's development trajectory and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm privileged to work with so many strong women in leadership positions in UN Thailand and in society as a whole. We already know what we are capable of. At this time, our contribution and leadership is more important than ever. Thank you, Mohammed, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you very, very much. As we can see, the issues are exhaustive and the list is long. There is a lot that has been done, but there is a lot more that we are yet to do. And we've seen from the very brief presentation that you've given us today that the United Nations here in Thailand is working almost in every direction to attend to these issues on every front. But I have to say that it all trickles down to personalities. As much as we are committed institutionally. We are very grateful to the leaders. We're very grateful to you, Resident Coordinator. We're very grateful to you, Executive Secretary, because you've really shown us that the commitment to the gender equality and women's rights agenda is unnegotiable. And we're very grateful to you for that. We are short of time, but we are still very, very keen to have questions from the floor. I already have two questions. One is for Ms. Ramida, and the other one is for the resident coordinator in Thailand. The question for Ms. Ramida, when you consider the work you did on the COVID-19 tracker application, what is it that you are most proud of?
Thank you for the question. We initially create this website for friends and family, something like that. And what I'm so proud of, because we got 4 million unique users on 5 days of the launch. And at the end, we have got 9 million users. So I think my little ideas help a lot of people, and I'm so proud of that. Thank you.
Indeed, you have to be proud. Yeah. The question to you, Resident Coordinator, is what are some of the lessons you could share with fellow women about what it takes to become a UN Resident Coordinator?
Very simple, Mohammed. You need a lot of passion for the work that you do, hard work, and I would say passion and love for the job that you do. If you have the passion, the hard work, and the love, you're going to make it to wherever you want to be. Not just the UN Resident Coordinator. You could be heading the government, heading the state, or even heading the United Nations one day.
Hopefully very soon. I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Jon Astrom Grondal, the Ambassador of Sweden. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. It's not really a question, rather a short intervention, if you may allow. Thank you so much. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, for a posting or for a day, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for organizing this important event. I would like to say just a few words on one perspective that I think is missing today. And I noticed and also regret the fact that I'm one of very few men here. I regret that. Why do I do that? Well, let me echo what the Secretary General just mentioned. Men and boys have very important roles to play, and let's be honest, men is behind and part of the problem, and thereby must be part of the solution. Not the least in paving the way for female leadership. I think this is a very important perspective. So as much as we need female representation in leadership, I strongly believe that we also need male role models. We need the father who shares the burden of household work. We need the business leaders who see, empower, and promote women at work. We need opinion makers who stand up for the idea that gender equality is the basis of the development of the society as a whole. Our sons and daughters need to see that. Other men need to experience that. In my current role as head of mission, I constantly think about how we can make our embassy a place where both men and women can grow. And I think one measure that is very important here is the ability to combine family and work. That's probably the most important factor. And we recently introduced flexible working hours. And we have also, of course, the pandemic has also helped in that regard. We have made work from home possible. And since long, we offer parental leave to both men and women. And we do this not only because it is the right thing to do, and we've heard this from other speakers today, it's also the smart thing to do. Gender inequality, at the contrary, comes at a very high cost for both companies and countries. Achieving gender equality is not, and I repeat, it's not only a women's issue, it's a society issue. Women have been leading the fight, that's true. Now it's time for men to join fully and wholeheartedly. Thank you for listening.
And I cannot agree more. We in UN Women have prioritized engaging men and boys in our next strategic plan. It's going to be one of the pillars that we are attending to. As you rightly said, Ambassador, it's not the right thing to do only, but it's also the smart thing to do. And we have a long way to go, and we need more feminist men and boys like your good self. And hopefully in the upcoming International Women's Day, we have more men in the room as well. We have one more, a space for one more question. If we've taken two from the floor, from online, would we like to have anyone from the floor to pose a question? Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much to the regional representative. Good morning, Excellencies, ambassadors for one day, and everyone who is present here. I'm Cynthia Moreno from the Mexican Embassy in Thailand. And I would like to thank and congratulate for the very good representation of many sectors in which women are making a very good difference. And at the same time, I would like to ask them, in particular in terms of those in private sector, something that you already mentioned in your intervention, the importance of private sector is such that I would like to know which are the impressions of the speakers of initiatives such as the Generation Equality Forum, which is going to take place by the end of the month in Mexico City on its, let's say, first stage, and the last stage will be the closing in Paris in June, in the month of June. This forum is willing to include all the stakeholders, and it is actually a conversation and a commitment process, and part of the commitments is the creation of different spheres of mutual agreement and participation, and it wants to engage the private sector. So going back to my question, and not to be that redundant, I would like to ask which would be the outcomes and the assets from such a forum for these private sector representatives here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The question is either to you, Ramida, or to you, Celia, online. As we know, the Generation Equality Forum is taking place this year. One is at the end of this month in Mexico, and the other one is in June in Paris. And it's basically a movement to bring everyone on board to push for gender equality and women's rights. So it's not only member states, it's not only civil society, it's also the private sector, individuals, academia. We all need all hands on deck to push for the gender equality and women's rights. Any reflections?
Okay, for me, I'm in a small company, so I think maybe another speaker can share.
Celia?
Yeah.
Sure. Please stop me if I've misunderstood the question, but I suppose the role of private sector equally contributing to forums such as this, advancing gender equality. I mean, from my perspective, as a business owner and as an incubator for women's businesses, the private sector has a huge role to play in any forum in which we're discussing gender equality. And a lot of that comes down to the choices that we make. So, for example, any private or public sector entity can influence women's empowerment within the private sector purely by their procurement processes, as an example. So embassies, events, conferences, NGOs, businesses, we can all look at how we're actually interacting with private sector entities and how we can influence the rise of women through that sector. So simply by choosing to take a look at your procurement process and have a look at the different businesses that you are engaging with, the stationery shop that is supplying to your office, for example, the catering company that is catering your event, the people that are speaking at your events, the people that are involved as organisers, the different businesses that you might be promoting. These are all things that we can do on an everyday basis, which really respects the role that women play when they're participating in the economy, whether that be as private sector leaders or, as employees as well. So, economic empowerment is about women making decisions about how they participate in and contribute to and benefit from the economy. And we all have jobs, right? This is how a key way in which we all participate in the economy. So working with the private sector around things like procurement, around things like how we engage with businesses that are female-led, these are really simple ways that we can kind of join forces and really work together, in my opinion.
And as you rightly said earlier, Celia, the private sector is not one size fits all, and there are huge differences between the different private sector companies. We in UN Women have been working on what we call the women empowerment principles. We reach out to the private sector to encourage them to include more women, not only in their own companies and push for their agency, but also in the supply chain of these companies. It's only one effort amongst many. We're approaching time. You have to congratulate me, MC, on keeping the time. But I'm very, very grateful again to the panelists who have been with us here today, for you ambassadors, for the young ambassadors, and everyone in the room for dedicating a couple of hours to celebrate International Women's Day. And back to you, our capable MC.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nasiri, for your excellent moderation of the session. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to invite Ms. Amida Ali Shabana, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, to deliver her closing remarks. Ibu Amida, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, MC. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we draw to a close, I would like to thank all the panelists, speakers, for your contributions and for sharing your knowledge, insights, and rich experiences during the very interesting and engaging dialogue. I also would like to express my sincerest appreciation to Her Excellency Ms. Smriti Irani, Minister for Women and Child Development of India, and to Her Excellency Ms. Batmuk Batseksek, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mongolia. I would also like to express my thanks, my special thanks and appreciation to Her Excellency, Ambassador of Canada, Dr. Sarah Taylor, for your address and also for your initiatives on this Ambassadors for a Day event, and to bring the winners of the Youth Competition Initiative, which provided the young leaders or the potential young leaders in Thailand with a wonderful opportunity to interact with women leaders. It is very heartening indeed to hear the inspiring stories of women leaders from the government, civil society, as well as the private sector, not only from Thailand, but also from the region, Asia Pacific, as well as those of young people who bring change and create a better world for women and girls in our region. Special recognition to my dear colleagues and partner today, UN Women, Anita Bhatia in New York there, and of course you, Mohammed, as well as all your team from the regional office of UN Women. Which all of you have worked very closely with us in putting together this event. I think this year's event is quite special, quite unique. Today we were reminded of how far we have come but also how far we have yet to go. While much progress has been made, we still need to focus and do more to achieve true equality in participation, decision-making, in public life, as well as other achievement in all walks of life in our region. Together, when we join hands, hearts, and minds, we can certainly move fast and far towards an equal future in the post-COVID-19 world. Once again, I wish you all a happy International Women's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu Amida, for your concluding remarks. Dear participants, this marks the end of the Asia-Pacific Regional Commemoration of International Women's Day 2021, Women in Leadership Achieving Future Equality in a COVID-19 World. At this time, I would like to inform on-site participants that there are refreshments just outside this conference room, and may I please ask you to leave the room with adequate physical distancing. Please ensure that you have your valuables and personal belongings with you. We thank you for your active participation and wish you all the best on International Women's Day 2021.
Thank you from BNSK.
Du même endroit. I can hear you, Jerry, but I've got nothing on the mic.
In Kigali, she wakes up.